So sometimes we make promises. So let's talk about promises in relation to Islam. What does the Quran say about making promises and commitments? And do you have to keep your promises? What if you couldn't? So, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَأَوْفُوا بِالْعَهْدِ إِنَّ الْعَهْدَ كَانَ مَسْئُولًا. So every promise that you make, you will be accountable for it. Every promise. So if you make a promise, make sure that you can make it. You can honor that promise. And those, okay, وَأَوْفُوا بِالْعَهْدِ إِنَّ الْعَهْدَ كَانَ مَسْئُولًا. Everyone will be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call you and account for every promise which you have made. Now, one of the characteristics of a believer, a Muslim, a good Muslim, a faithful Muslim, there are characteristics in Surah Al-Mu'minun. One of them is وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. And those who keep their promises and honor their commitment. So if you make a promise, you should keep it. Okay. Who do you keep your promise to? Do you have to keep your promise to everyone? Everyone? Okay. So Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam said, there are three things that you have to keep. You have no excuse. You have to keep you have to honor these things. One of them is to respect your parents. It doesn't matter whether your parents are good or bad. You don't have to listen to them if they told you to do something haram, of course. But you have to listen to them, you have to respect them all the time. Even at the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some of the Muslims told him that they have parents and their parents are not Muslim, and they're trying to tell them not to be Muslims, not to do the good things, not to follow Islam. Prophet Muhammad also, in the teachings of Islam, you have to respect and honor your parents regardless of who they are or what they do. But you don't have to listen to them if they ask you to do something haram. That's one thing. The other two things is to honor your commitment for people, whether they're good or bad. للبر والفاجر. Doesn't matter. If you make a promise, you have to keep that promise. Another one is, if you make a commitment, you have to honor those commitments. Whether for good people or bad people. So, when do you make a promise? Okay. Imam Ali alayhi salam said, do not make a promise. لا تعدن عدة. لا تثق من نفسك بإنجازها. Do not make a promise if you know that you will not be able to keep that promise. I know sometimes, there is pressure. Somebody's like, say I promise. Don't say I promise unless you know for sure that you can fulfill that promise, that you can honor it. Okay? You can say that I will try. You can say that maybe. But if you say I promise, then that is like giving an oath. That you have to fulfill that promise if you make it. Unless you make a haram promise, then you don't have to do it. Right? Okay. So that's for making a promise. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, people called him as-Sadiq al-Amin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You are of high ethics, high morals. One of the attributes, one of the characteristics of Prophet Muhammad is he was as-Sadiq al-Amin. He was very honest and very sincere. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam never lied. He never lied in his life, and he never broke a promise. Prophet Muhammad always honored his commitments and kept his promises. That gave him this As-Sadiq al-Amin. Even his enemies, even the people who did not follow Islam, called him As-Sadiq al-Amin. People at that time, the time Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were no banks, so when they travel, they have to keep their belongings or possessions with someone. They would keep their possessions and belongings with Prophet Muhammad. Even kuffar, even those who did not believe in him, because they know that he is As-Sadiq al-Amin. So if you want to gain the respect of people, be honest and keep your promises and fulfill your commitments. That's one example. Another example is from Karbala. Imam Abbas alayhi salam made a commitment to take care of Zainab. And he did. He took that promise to the limit. He also promised to bring water. You know, like when the army of Yazid, they blocked Imam Hussein and they blocked everyone from getting to the water. He said, I will try to go and bring water for the children. He went there and he fought until he died. Imam Abbas alayhi salam wanted to honor that commitment. He protected Zainab to the last moment of his life until he fell to the ground. He could not move anymore. He also tried to keep his promise to bring water, and he died trying. He died trying to keep that promise. The companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam also made a commitment, made a promise for Imam Hussein to protect Imam Hussein and his family. On the night of the 10th of محرم, Imam Hussein alayhi salam gathered all his companions and he told them, those people are trying to kill me. They're not trying to kill you. So you can leave. You're free to leave. You don't have to stay with me. You've already done so much for me. You came with me all this way. You don't have to. You don't have to stay and die for me. You know what they said? They said, no way. We made that promise. We're not going to leave. We will stay with you to the end. And so many of them actually died. All of them were killed fighting and protecting Imam Hussein and protecting Islam. So, it seems that we have time for questions. Do you guys have any question? Any question about making commitments and promises? Any questions? Yes. If you follow Imam Hussein, absolutely. If you fight for Imam Hussein, of course, all the people who fought for Imam Hussein, with Imam Hussein, will go to Jannah. That's a promise from Imam Hussein. Yes. Why do we wear black in Muharram? We wear black in Muharram because black is a color for sorrow and it's a color for sadness. People wear black. It's a tradition that we follow all the time. It's in our culture that the color black. When if you lose someone who is close to you, if you love someone, or if you remember the death of someone, just like we remember the death of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Hussein alayhi salam died around this time, like around the same. Every year we remember Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and in his memory Are deals like promises? Yes, deals are like promises. If you make a deal, as a Muslim, you have to honor that deal. Now, if you make a promise and you cannot make it, let's say an emergency happened, something happened. There is another hadith from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, if you make a promise, if someone makes a promise and intended to keep that promise, but something happened, an emergency, something happened to them, they could not keep it, but they really wanted to keep it. They worked hard to achieve that, they worked hard to honor that commitment and to achieve that, to keep that promise. But something happened and they couldn't. Then there is no guilt on them. There is no guilt on them because they did. Their intention was to keep that promise. Breaking a promise, yes, it is a sin. If you make a promise and break it, then it is a sin. However, unless you promise to do something haram. If you promise to do something haram, then you don't have to keep that promise. But don't even make that promise because it is a sin. Every time you say, I promise, and if you don't keep it, it's not a good thing in Islam.
Is there different colors for like emotions or something?
Yes, I only know about black. Black is a color for sadness, but it doesn't have to be. As I said, it's a tradition. You don't have to, but it's a tradition that we follow. There are associations here, like you associate a feeling with colors, like anger is like with red, I think, and there are like other things. Yeah, happy is green, but it's also like again, it's a tradition. It doesn't have to happen. Exactly, yeah. But these are things that people make, like yellow for excitement, but it doesn't have to be. It's just something that people make up when they do some research. Do you have to be nice to the Imam? Yeah, of course you have to be nice to the Imam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Prophet Muhammad this. He said, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam is the grandson of Prophet Muhammad. So we have to respect Imam Hussein. And it's in the Quran, we have to show love to Ahlul Bayt. And Imam Hussein is one of Ahlul Bayt. So why do we do the traditions that we follow here? All the things that we do in Muharram. Again, this is a tradition, and people express their sadness. They express their sorrow for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It's an expression. Different people have different ways of expressing themselves. So some people wear black when they're sad. Some people cry. Some people do ladum, So everyone has their own way of expressing their sadness and for remembering Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Okay, what if you make a promise and you forgot? Well, you try your best. That's why don't take it easy. Don't make promises all the time, because I've seen people doing that. They keep saying, they keep making promises, but they never fulfill them. Don't make too many promises, because if you make too many promises and then you forget about them, people would not believe you anymore. They would not respect you because promised me to do this, but you never did. So you lose respect if you keep doing that, and also it's a sin to make a promise and don't keep it. So try very hard to keep your promises all the time. Okay, we have 1 more minute, sir. If you do a good deed, would you go to Jannah? Well, it would get you closer to Jannah. But if you do one good deed and then you do so many bad deeds, then that's good. Yeah, like a really good deed. Like one deed might not be enough. You have to make it. Okay. You have to make it a habit. Doing good deeds, it has to be a habit. You, like a believer, a Muslim, like the mu'min, a faithful person, always do good deeds. Always. Okay. No, because at least did you try to do it? Did you mean to break that promise? There you go. So like if you intend to keep that promise, then there's nothing wrong with that. You would not be like, there's no guilt on you, there's no sin in that. Okay, 1 more question and that's it. We'll be done, sorry. If you cannot understand, if the promise doesn't make sense to you, don't make it. Don't make that promise. Say like, I don't understand what you're telling me. If you don't understand, that's why you have to be very careful. If somebody tells you, promise me to do this, you don't have to say I promise. But as soon as you say I promise, then it's stuck with you. You have to fulfill it. You have to keep that promise. You have to honor that commitment when you do something wrong. So as I said, like, be careful. Don't always say I promise. Don't say it too many times. Be careful when you say it. Thank you. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.